Hello, my name is Khadijah Ali-Coleman, and I am a mother who homeschooled my daughter off and on for 13 years. I graduated her from our homeschool in 2021 when she was 17 years old. She went on to university and graduated from the University of San Francisco at 20 in 2024. I'm a tenured professor of English and a published author. I'm also an entrepreneur and the director of Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars. Thank you for joining us for the 6th annual teach-in. Homeschooling is a rewarding journey that can be challenging at the start when you have decided you want to do it, but you aren't sure how you want to get started. Last year, I wrote a short Substack article on the 11 ways, I was about to say 17 ways, but the 11 ways Black parents can prepare themselves to build the capacity for homeschooling their children in grades P through 12. I'm going to use those 11 tips for the framework of this talk titled Getting Started Homeschooling. I would love it if you can follow me on Substack if you are on Substack. But I think that article provides a good foundation for things that I want to share with you today in this coffee talk. So first, my first tip would be research homeschooling laws and requirements. So first of all, I can't express enough how important it is that you research what the laws are in your state regarding homeschooling. Each state has different homeschooling regulations that could include something as basic as keeping a portfolio of activities to requiring you to have a certified teacher lead instruction in your homeschool. It varies from state to state. So you need to check your state's Department of Education website for policies specific to your state and county or your city. The failure to do this could get you into legal difficulties if you don't follow the procedure required to notify the state that you are homeschooling and providing the appropriate documentation if applicable. So for instance, I homeschooled in Maryland, and the requirement at the time was to maintain a portfolio and have quarterly portfolio reviews. I also had to send a letter to the county office indicating an intent to homeschool, and I had to formally withdraw my daughter from her school. My daughter attended public school off and on, so I had to follow this process during the times I homeschooled her. And I homeschooled her for parts of elementary school and for all of high school. So it is important that you are making sure that you are paying attention to what the rules are specific to your state. Do not listen to your homie who may be living in another state who did it one way, because it may be completely different for you. I currently live in Maryland and very close to Virginia, very close to DC, and that area is called the DMV. And I will tell you that the laws in Maryland are very different than DC, even though I can drive down the street and be in Washington, D.C. I'm also based in Baltimore as well. I go back and forth between the DMV and Baltimore. And so it's important for you to know what your state's laws are. All right, so tip number 2 is connect with Black homeschooling communities. So, of course, I will recommend that you go online first and connect with Black homeschooling communities, but I think this is a start to finding places where you can meet in person as well. So I homeschooled before and during the COVID-19 quarantine, and so I engaged with co-ops and collectives before online homeschooling communities for Black families were abundant like they are now. So the Sankofa Homeschooling Collective based in Washington, D.C. was the first stop for me and my daughter, and she took her first co-op courses there. I actually also taught a course for Sankofa very briefly. We later enrolled in a co-op that was science focused because she started taking, that was an area that I really felt that I needed support, that I couldn't lead that myself, was the science and math. So this co-op was intended to be a place where she could be taught by teachers who specialized in the sciences and in math. She then went on to take in college courses where she was dual enrolled in community college while being homeschooled for high school. So engaging with other homeschooling families within a homeschooling co-op was an excellent opportunity to meet other homeschooling families and not feel so isolated during our homeschooling journey. So tip number 3, I would say, is define your educational philosophy and your goals. So all families are unique. We know that, right? So you do not have to feel obligated to homeschool like another family you may know. Determine what works best for your family. So there is a large contingent of people who identify by their religion and may want to gather with other homeschoolers around religion, but all homeschoolers are not the same. So our family is not an organized religious family, and we are extremely artistic and creative. So finding like-minded homeschooling families and co-op programs that we fit was challenging for us a lot of times in the area we lived, because a lot of the homeschooling co-ops in our area really rallied around religion or identity. So identifying the goals of our homeschool and determining the learning was ongoing and could be had outside of the home, outside of a co-op classroom, outside of a traditional way that we conceive education, really gave us the leeway to begin thinking outside of the box with how this journey was going to manifest. So that was a lot. So I'll break it down by saying I introduced a syllabus format to my daughter, allowed her to develop time management through choosing the order of some activities, while there were some activities that had to be scaffolded. And that's an education term that really talks about there being an order to teaching things, because, and that happens a lot in math as well as teaching writing, where you need to be able to do one concept and understand a concept before moving on to the next. And so while I introduced a syllabus where she could identify what learning activities she wanted to do, when I taught concepts and things like that, that was usually in a scaffolding kind of format, whether I was the one facilitating and teaching, or whether she was getting that information through a co-op or a workshop that I had paid for. So you can read books about different learning pedagogies to see what fits best with your homeschool goals and apply them as you see fit. But what is most important is that what you choose is effective for your child and compatible with your family values, and always understand that you can switch it up if you find or realize that it's not working. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about homeschooling, is that you try something, this isn't a fit. For example, we tried Saxon Math, which is a curriculum, and I used it for a while, and then it wasn't a fit, and moved to something else. And so you have the ability to do that. So number 4 is invest in culturally relevant curriculum and resources. So one of the benefits of homeschooling is the ability to make it culturally relevant. And that may mean something different things to different people. So for me, as a Black woman who was raised Pan-African and considers my African heritage as being something that needs to be brought to the forefront because of racism, cultural desecration, and the consistent attempts to separate Black people from their heritage, culturally relevant means teaching about Africa before enslavement, African people before we were enslaved, teaching from the void, from those spaces that have been blocked out or blacked out, or for some reason kept from us. You can find materials that center Black history, literature, and contributions. And I would encourage you to pay attention to where these materials are created. It's coming out now. People are becoming aware that a lot of the textbooks that many of us had to use when we were in public schooling, a lot of these textbooks came from Texas and from areas and from organizations and companies that purposefully created textbooks that left out history. One of the most deplorable things that has happened recently with this new administration that we have in power is that the museum, the Smithsonian Museum, the National African American History Museum in Washington, D.C. Has literally been desecrated in a way. People have been reporting. I haven't been to the museum since 2024, and I have had reports that the Emmett Till exhibit, they photoshopped his body out of a photo. And if you recall the history of Emmett Till and his horrific murder, and his mother, Mammy Till, made history by asking to have his coffin open so that the people can see the horrific nature of his injury. And that was splashed across the world. That was in the museum, and they have mandated that be photoshopped, as well as other exhibits in the museum being taken down. And this is happening nationally. And so when you are gathering these materials to be culturally relevant, it is very important for you to be discerning, for you to be effective in making sure that you know who has created these materials, where they're coming from, are they accurate, not relying on AI to tell you history. Do not create curriculum materials for history if you yourself are not knowledgeable, because that means you can't proofread and edit and make sure that the information is reflective of accurate information. So you can supplement with Black-led educational platforms like Liberated Minds, led by Queen Thais, our keynote speaker, Kamali Academy. My daughter participated in Kamali Academy years ago, like more than 10 years ago, and they're still offering culturally relevant education, but there's so many others. But I will also caution you to not just believe that because a Black person is teaching or a Black person is saying that I'm offering culturally relevant. Be very discerning and ask, what does that mean? And you have to get into the habit as a homeschooling parent to ask questions, to not make assumptions because someone may be the same race or be the same religion as you. You have to ask questions. So it's also crucial for you to build your own repository of information. If your intent is to have a culturally relevant homeschool, you have got to read. You have got to be a critical thinker. You have got to realize that you are most likely have not been taught in a way that affirms your heritage. So you have to do the work to study, read, and be a knowledge seeker if you are to curate your children's experience to the best of your ability. So that leads me to tip 5, which is assess your child's learning style. Observe whether or not they thrive with visual, auditory, kinesthetic, or hands-on learning. Adjust teaching. My street is off the chain. Pardon for all the auxiliary noises. But adjust teaching methods to fit their needs. For example, project-based learning, educational games, those types of things. Tip 6 is create a flexible homeschooling schedule. So you may start with a routine, not a rigid schedule that allows for breaks, play, and exploration. Routine is really good, but routine doesn't have to be what we're thinking of. It doesn't have to look like kitchen table routine. We have lunch. We have it can be a routine spread throughout the week. It could be some of the things that are included in your day, from preparing breakfast to cleaning up to having rest time. Those are things also that can be included in a routine. It does not have to be a rigid schedule. And so the takeaway for tip number 6 is do not attempt to replicate a traditional classroom environment. Okay, so then that takes me to number 7. Prepare financially for homeschooling costs. Budget for curriculum, field trips, extracurriculars, supplies. Use free, low-cost resources, of course, like Khan Academy, YouTube, local libraries. But know that there will be things that cost money, and they are worth it. It may be music classes or a trip for the family or special equipment for something your child is building skills in. Prepare financially and recognize this is an investment into your child's future. Of course, easier said than done. But know that for camps and classes, I always sought scholarship opportunities and discounts when they were available. But many opportunities that cost money were bargains, in my opinion. Budget and make the determination of what works for you. I don't think it should be a goal to be cheap. I think being frugal and financially prudent is different than just being cheap. I believe teachers and artists should be paid for their labor. I am a teacher. I am an artist. I want to be paid for my labor. So I would never advocate for you to do things to avoid paying for quality learning for your child. Tip number 8, build a support network. Partner with other homeschooling families for co-op classes, play dates, or resource sharing. Seek mentors, experienced Black homeschoolers, is what I mean, for guidance. And I say that because you may think that just asking someone older, but if someone is not familiar with the homeschooling culture, a lot of times their information, their opinion on things may not be factually based. And a lot of people give misinformation when it comes to homeschooling because they just don't know. And so I always would ask you to ask an experienced Black homeschooler before you ask someone just because they're an elder, or someone who was a homeschooler, but they may not be Black. A lot of our experiences are unique within this ecosystem because it still is something, it's a schooling practice that is predominantly done by white, well-to-do people, but there is emerging diversity, but there are experiences that it would make more sense to ask someone who is an experienced Black homeschooler. Of course, this sounds easier said than done, but the reality is that your social capital, which is your ability to network and get out there to learn and to meet folks, will have an infinite impact on the learning experience that your child has. So it is imperative that you get out there and engage with the homeschooling ecosystem. So that leads me to number 9. Homeschooling is demanding. Schedule time for your own rest, hobbies, and community involvement. So this tip is to prioritize self-care and avoid burnout. I was and I am a touring artist who teaches and performs. I'm also a college professor with multiple ventures and a nonprofit that I started in 2024. I have a lot of gigs, and I had a lot of gigs when I was homeschooling my daughter, and it was necessary for us to have downtime. So we learned that we are park people. I'm a beach person. These excursions were built into our homeschool practice, and there was no work without the corresponding play and rest. So then tip 10 is stay informed and keep learning. Attend homeschooling conferences like this annual virtual Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars Teach-In. But there are so many now homeschooling conferences. It blows my mind. Sometimes it's like someone started homeschooling for a year and now they're putting on a conference. And I'm not throwing shade, but again, this is something that I would urge you to be discerning. Check out to see who are the speakers, what are they talking about, and if it's something that you want to learn, pay for the conference. All right, read books like Homeschooling Black Children in the U.S., edited by yours truly and Dr. Cheryl Field-Smith. We also have a new book, Homeschooling on the College Pathway. My point is to read. Network. Join mailing lists for museums, libraries, art councils, nonprofits that serve youth. You are your child's lifeline to the outer world. And then lastly, 11. And you didn't know this, but 11 is my birthday, December 11th. So 11 tips. Number 11, trust yourself and your cultural wisdom. You don't need to replicate public school at home. Incorporate oral traditions, storytelling, and real world learning that reflect your family's values. You can confidently create a nurturing, empowering, and culturally affirming homeschooling experience for your children. All right, you can do it. The world offers so many resources that didn't exist when I started homeschooling over 15 years ago. So you got this. I want to encourage you to visit blackfamilyhomeschool.org to learn more and to keep abreast of events for homeschooling parents that we offer. You can visit my website at Ali-Coleman.com. And I want to again thank you so much for joining us this year for our annual BFHES virtual teach-in. Take care. If you're still with us, don't go just yet. I want to ask you to take a look at our new book, Homeschooling Black Children on a College Pathway. This comprehensive resource includes narratives from half dozen homeschooling parents who homeschooled children before, during, and after the COVID-19 global quarantine. The stories included in this book showcase strategies to prepare homeschooled children for STEM majors, college athletic programs, dual enrollment, and more. The book discusses the ways the metaverse can be used in college prep and how including a liberatory framework in your homeschool practice can garner positive outcomes for homeschoolers leaving home for college. This book also includes worksheets on how to have important conversations with your homeschooled children and the entire family as you prepare your homeschoolers for their transition to college or university. This book is presented by Black family homeschool educators and scholars through the literary nonprofit Black Writers for Peace and Social Justice, Incorporated. Black family homeschool educators and scholars is the first U.S.-based research and education group dedicated specifically to the topic of Black family homeschooling, founded in 2020. Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars produces the annual BFHES virtual teach-in and presented the book Homeschooling Black Children in the U.S. Theory, Practice, and Popular Culture in 2022. Thank you for buying. Take care.